Well, I think we're live. How's everybody doing? So I had such a good time yesterday. I thought today I would come on. Whenever I see a news article or a video or something that challenges my views, I found it really helpful yesterday to talk about some things that I read. So today I wanted to talk about a video I saw from a friend of mine who's quite conservative. And the issue was mail-in voting. Now, I live in the United Kingdom, and I absentee vote. So I mail and vote regularly. So I wanted to watch this video. I wanted to comment on it live. I had a quick sort of scan of it. I didn't listen to the whole thing because I was working today, but I thought it would be fun just to listen to this and see if this video could sway my point of view. So from what I can gather, Dan Bongino is a conservative, is a podcaster, a talk show host. And the title intrigued me. And it was about mail-in voting, and the liberal Democrats don't let them pull the wool over your eyes. I think I just want to comment on it from a neutral perspective, and just see what he has to say. So why don't we start playing and seeing what Dan has to say about this? Make sure that you can hear it. Actually, do we have the audio? Share audio. There we go. So let's take a look at this and see what Dan has to say about mail-in voting.
What I'm talking about, to be clear, is mass mail-in ballot, where they basically say, and Joe, if this doesn't make sense, stop me. It should, but liberals are watching and they get confused easily. I'm talking about saying, no, we're not going to open up live in-person voting because of the coronavirus. We're just going to mail everyone about. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, so, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the audio in case you're getting a bit of feedback on that. And if you're hearing my audio and it's a bit crackly, it was yesterday, let me know. So a bit of hyperbole there, I think. I don't like to think I'm liberal. I'd like to think I'm fairly independent in my views, but some people may disagree with that. But yeah, I don't think the idea is it's just a blanket. We should have everybody mail-in voting. I think people should be given the option. I think you look at areas such as Montana, that's probably not the case, that they need to have mail-in voting. But there's quite a few states, I think, that already do mail-in voting. Since no one's listening, I'm just going to go very quickly and pull this back out and put it back on, because I did change my audio, so I'm just going to double check here. I'm going to start this over again. As you can tell, I'm professional at this. Okay, let's try again. So let's see what Dan. I'm just going to go back and start over here.
What I'm talking about, to be clear, is mass mail-in balloting, where they basically say, and Joe, if this doesn't make sense, stop me. It should, but liberals are watching and they get confused easily. I'm talking about saying, no, we're not going to open up live in-person voting because of the coronavirus. We're just going to mail everyone about. That's what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Where infrastructures are not set up to handle that kind of volume.
So infrastructures are not set up to handle that. I think if we're talking about mass scale, everybody has to do mail-in voting. I think there's something like, I did look this up earlier. I think there's something like 33 states that actually are set up for it. But that still leaves a good, 60% that aren't, 55, 60%, something like that.
Everybody clear? Okay, good. I know my listeners are getting it. But again, we have liberals out there who willingly play stupid a lot. So WRDW did a little analysis of what that could look like and kind of tested out the mail system. They mailed a bunch of faux ballots, not fake ballots. They weren't trying to vote. They mailed them to their own P.O. box, figuring, let's see how quickly the votes would get to our own P.O. box if it was kind of a faux election.
So before he continues, I think when we look at absentee ballots, my vote, I would expect, probably didn't get counted until 2 or 3 weeks after the election. And I think they call the election when the absentee ballots won't make a difference in the result. And I think in California recently, it took them quite a while, something like a month to confirm the result of the election. So if that were to happen, let's say that's a worst case scenario, that it took a month just to confirm the outcome of the presidential election. My initial reaction is, I don't see the big deal with that. It's something that we need to get right. And if it takes till the end of November, beginning of December, that still leaves plenty of time for a transition team to come in there and get the new president prepared, or the existing president, depending on what the outcome is?
Check this out. It's about a minute 30 clip. We had to cut it a little bit short, but this is WRDW. Check out the results of this disaster.
If you know how to mail a letter, you already know how to mail in your vote.
How you doing? Good. Thank you very much.
But how long might it take for that vote to actually arrive and be counted?
You're welcome. Have a good afternoon.
We decided to test it, sending 100 mock ballots simulating 100 voters from locations all across Philadelphia to a P.O. box we set up to represent a local election office. A couple days later, we mailed 100 more using the same size envelopes and the same class of mail as real ballots here. To approximate the weight, we even folded mock votes into every one.
So just looking at that envelope that went in there, and I did read about this a while ago after my friends were challenging me on mail-in ballots because I was very much in support of them. And the letter that he just put in there looked like a standard first-class letter. It didn't look like the kind of envelope they would use. I believe, and I'll look it up in a bit, but I believe they use a tracked envelope. So it's something that's specific. You get it and you have to send it back. And I believe, I'll double check it, but I believe that those ballots can be tracked. So as a voter, and I could do this with my absentee ballot, I could actually go online and see if my vote's been counted and the progress of that vote. So has it made it to its destination? And that vote is a very unique fingerprint to my ballot. It's not just a general yes or no card that I tick. So it's very specific. So I think that's not quite accurate, but I appreciate what he's trying to do with this experiment.
In the following week, we checked our P.O. box for the results.
Mail pickup notice, there's more.
When we went to collect everything, though,
Nothing?
most of our votes seemed to be lost.
So as far as experiments go, this P.O. box in Philadelphia is probably not set up the same way to receive a ballot as let's say a polling place or wherever that they are being sent to. I have a feeling that the people that are receiving the votes in the post kind of know they're coming, whereas this person, it's just a P.O. box in some dumpy looking post office in Philadelphia. Go Eagles.
That's all I have back there right now.
You're sure? You're totally sure. I believe in you.
All right, good.
So is this what people who don't believe in mail-in voting, is this what they're expecting that process to be in the building? People just, I have no idea why these ballots are being sent here. Oh yeah, I work at the polling place. So sure, I think we probably should be organizing those, don't you think? I think that's not quite an accurate representation.
Okay, take care.
We had to ask for a manager
I'm trying to do something about mailing ballots.
and explain ourselves before someone finally found our votes.
So the whole conversation with the post office for the efficacy of this experiment happened after they couldn't find the ballots. And of course they did find them. They were there. Well, we'll see what happens, because I think I watched up to this point here. I didn't watch after the investigation. So I have seen a bit of this earlier.
They have it somewhere else.
Okay, thank you.
1, 2.
We soon discovered another problem: missorted mail. 2 pieces of it.
We got a birthday card from Mike to Ronnie. Have a sweet B-day. Get it? There's a B on top.
When the birthday greetings ended,
12, 13.
we found a bigger issue. 21% of our votes hadn't materialized after 4 days.
Okay. So again, I don't have enough to make any conclusion on that. And that doesn't, if let's say something is lost in the mail 2 weeks, it's not going to negatively impact the result of an election.
And the batch we'd mailed a week prior, some of those were missing too.
Folks, that goes on for like another 30, 40 seconds. You can check out WRDW in Augusta, Georgia.
So and to be fair to Dan, I haven't checked out that link. I missed this bit. So I really haven't seen what he said. I pretty much stopped it after that investigation as I wanted time to digest it.
Their website has the full clip. But in the interest of time, it only gets worse from that point on, right, Joe? This is not good. Folks, just imagine for a moment. Again, putting in context, I'm not here to put lipstick on anything. Again, wasn't crazy about the tweet, even the suggestion we should delay the election.
I appreciate that. And that's what I spoke about yesterday. I had people commenting yesterday, and it really threw me off my game because I never have anyone comment. I think we've had once, and I really didn't stay on point. But I appreciate he said that. I think the more I think about it, the more I look into mail-in voting and the current infrastructure. I think even for Republicans, it's a bit of a tricky issue because Republicans are very much hands-off government, and we even look back to what the Tea Party represented. I think it's a very scary thing for Republicans to support, let's say, changing the election day. And I think it's only really been Donald Trump that said anything about that.
Of course, it's going to cause mass chaos in this country, which we didn't need right now. But having said that, Trump drawing attention to this issue is very real. And the media, with their hair on fire, covering the delay the election part without addressing Trump's very substantive concerns about the mail-in voting disaster occurring right now in New York.
So I did read about this. Well, was it in New York, or I thought it was in New Jersey? New Jersey had mail-in voting issues. I'll have to look at. Well, let's look up New York actually whilst we're here. But I think it's a fair thing to raise about the president talking about pushing the election back. It's very sort of I don't want to say authoritarian, but it's just got sort of a feeling of that. And I don't know that Donald Trump has said anything substantive. So, I'm sorry about that. I don't think he said anything with substance outside of it's fraught with fraud. There's not a lot of substance there. I need something to refer to, because when you look up voting fraud by mail, the instances are relatively minute. There's actual data on it. Because you have a ballot that has a specific fingerprint on it, it's very hard to get away with it. And I think you look at the other problems where you have a polling station with a standard polling station with a huge glut of ballots versus every home is a polling station with a fingerprint of a ballot. It's very hard to get away with large scale mail-in fraud because you're having to coordinate too many moving pieces. Let me just look that up. New York. So let's see, your new, and I'll share it on the screen. New York mail-in voting issues. I'll just go with the first thing that comes up. I want to try to find something that's not NBC, in case anybody watching here is thinking it's fake news or whatever. Error and fraud no, it's 2012. New York's election failure is a warning. Okay, so that could be something. Let's have a look at that. Let's look at it together, shall we? More than a month after New York's June 23rd primary election, state election officials are still counting votes. In some legislative districts, they haven't even started counting absentee votes, which I think in some states, they actually count the mail-in votes first before they even count the ballots. In the best case scenario, election officials hope to declare winners by first Tuesday in August, 6 weeks after Election Day. It may take a lot longer than that. Election officials in New York City have already invalidated upwards of 100,000 absentee ballots, about 1 of every 5 that were mailed in from the 5 boroughs. And furious candidates are already filing lawsuits charging discrimination and disenfranchisement. So this is in the Atlantic. So I'd be curious yeah, that's an issue. If there was 100 and that, well, it depends how many of those ballots. What was the issue if let's say they were, so it was 100,000 absentee ballots, about 1 every 5 were mailed in 5 boroughs. And it was down to, what was it? Invalidated, about 1 in 5. It doesn't say why they were invalidated, because I know that some states will invalidate a ballot because somebody's come in and voted in person, or there was an issue with they didn't follow the rules, or to protect against voter fraud. A lot of the same rules are in place for regular ballots that are for mail-in ballots. So I'm not 100% sure what the major issue is with that. So every election in the past few months has provided more evidence of a system that ain't able to keep up with coronavirus. So this is during the pandemic. Wisconsinites waited to vote for a few hours in the rain, wearing makeshift masks. Just want to see what they're saying about New York. So there's 100,000 votes that weren't counted for whatever reason that isn't necessarily related to mail-in votes, and the result isn't confirmed yet. So again, imagine what happens when the results matter more. Imagine it's December 5th, a month after the national election in the fall. Is President Donald Trump ahead, or Joe Biden? Who's ahead? And so are they being contested? Who's making the decisions? I don't see anything here that's overly catastrophic if it's going to take us a while. You may have a different opinion than I, but I may read up on that a bit more because I am reading this in first person live. Just trying to be a bit brave there. But I will look that up. I'll maybe comment on that another time.
That you want to take nationwide in light of what WRDW discovered is ridiculous. Can you just imagine Florida, where I live, notorious for paper-thin elections? We all remember Bush v. Gore like it was yesterday.
So just to clarify, he's criticizing Florida's mail-in voting because they couldn't get it right at the polling station. Doesn't that maybe confirm that the mail-in voting might be a better option, or maybe they need to look at alternatives? I don't know. I'd be curious to hear what he thinks about that.
Can you imagine that happening in 4 or 5 swing states? Imagine Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida, North Carolina, all at the same time in an election decided by 0.05% of the vote. People showing up on television in mass saying, hey, mailed my ballot. I don't know what happened.
Isn't that the definition of a straw man? So that's a situation. Has that happened before? Are there any issues with mail-in voting that's a possible situation? I think we could take a look at what Florida's mail-in voting is, because I think my sister lives in Florida, and mail-in voting. Let's take a look at that. Let's see here. Let me look at frequently asked questions for mail-in voting. We'll show that on the screen, and we'll see what the deal is with Florida's mail-in voting. Paper thin. Okay. Here we go. FAQ. That's voting. I want to find mail-in voting. Let's take a look. See, I can't multitask. That's the big problem here. Vote by mail. FAQ. Here we go. Let's try this one. So this is Wesley Wilcox, County of Marion. So vote by mail. What is vote by mail? Formerly referred as absentee voting. Is it convenient? Okay. Who can use it? All registered users. How do I receive a vote by mail ballot? Vote by mail ballots are not automatically mailed. To receive a vote by mail ballot, a voter must have an active request on file. Vote by mail requests expire after 2 generation cycles. So you're not just getting a ballot. It's not just you're getting a blank ballot. Again, it is something specific to you in Florida. A request to vote by mail ballot. A request for a vote by mail ballot to be mailed to a voter must be received by Marion County Election Center no later than 5 p.m. on the 10th day before the election. So there is plenty of time to get that vote in early. If you have concerns, you're not going to have your vote counted before the election. So requesting. So there's a few different ways to request it. When will I receive my ballot? Who can pick up my ballot? So this is one of the interesting points that may be contested. So let's see what this says. A voter can pick up his or her own vote by mail ballot, or may designate in writing another person to pick up their ballot beginning on the 9th day before the election. A designee may only pick up 2 ballots per election, not including his or her own ballot or immediate family members. The designee must provide a photo identification, written authorization from the voter, and a complete affidavit to pick up vote by mail ballot for the voter. So to me, that seems a lot more stringent than, I guess, what Donald Trump was worried about with people being bussed in. And funny, he hasn't talked about changing anything with that. Maybe he has. So if you're listening and you want to comment, let me know. If the ballot is picked up on election day, the election day vote by mail ballot delivery affidavit must also be completed by the voter designee to affirm that he or she has emergency keeping them from being able to vote. Okay. How do I vote? Mail ballot. All vote by mail packets contain voting instructions. If you misplaced or made a mistake on your ballot, call this number to request replacement ballot sent to you. A voter may receive up to 3 vote by mail ballots, but whichever one is received by our office first, will be the one that is counted. After the election center has received a vote by mail ballot, no changes may be made. So that's interesting. I don't see much in the way of. I find that to be a really hard system to defraud, really. I don't know. I did read that Ron DeSantis actually was a Republican, painfully right wing, was actually backing the idea of having an all vote by mail system in Florida. They already have it, and it's already in place. So I don't know what his concerns are about Florida if it's something that's already in place.
My vote's never been counted. I went to the website. They said they never got it. Folks.
Yeah, but you can still. Is he assuming 100% of the people? So again, this is a bit of hyperbole because he's saying, I guess on the election day, 100% of people are just going to come out who haven't had their vote counted and raise it. And I don't think that's the issue. And for me, if I was in his position, I'd want to know what is the data for that? I'm making these bold claims that we shouldn't do this. Why? Why shouldn't we do this? What are the percentages of people that have this happen to them? I think it's a fair question to ask, and I don't think he can have an opinion unless he knows the numbers. And I don't know the numbers as well. I could be swayed one way or the other, but everything I've seen has told me that mail-in voting is if anything more secure. But my opinion is still changeable.
You want to talk about the dismantling of the republic overnight? There would be mass chaos in the streets. So again, before you jump down Trump's throat, everyone, oh, Trump, he's got hair on fire, robots bouncing off the walls. You get the whole routine. Maybe you should consider that he's onto something here.
But how? I think if we look at, so there was one thing let me find something, because I did find some information, and it was from the Brennan Center, which I think is a nonpartisan think tank, is what I saw it was, where they had an article on mail-in voting. Here it is. Let me share that. So this is what I found this is their debunking of I guess issues with mail-in voting. So first, there's identity verification, which we saw with the Florida example. And I think in every state, you pretty much have to verify who you are before you get a mail-in ballot. And that mail-in ballot is tracked. So I know in some states, I did read that if, let's say, a mail-in ballot doesn't reach the destination, it's not going to be counted. It's different for each state, but I think they're all pretty strict to be able to allow mail-in voting. I read earlier that 27 states allow mail-in voting without excuse. 33 states allow mail-in voting without excuse or reason. So you don't have to be absentee. And of those 33, 27 have early voting. So there's even plenty of time for people to get their ballots in. And there's nothing to say that all states that are looking to do this couldn't start accepting votes in October if the infrastructure is set up. I think the one argument you can make is there's not enough time to set up any major changes in the voting process for, let's say, those states that only do absentee ballots. But that's not an argument against mail-in voting. That's an argument against preparation or our level of preparation. Barcodes. Most election jurisdictions now use some form of barcode on their ballot envelopes. These barcodes allow election officials to keep track of ballot processing and help voters know whether their ballot has been received. I wonder if Florida does Florida track votes? Florida track mail-in votes. Let's see here. I'll look at this with you. I'll be brave. How to correct missing mismatched signature on your vote. A supervisor of elections is required to notify a voter as soon as it is practical if a voter's signature is missing or doesn't match the one on record. So I think it's very similar to what you're doing at the ballot box as they're checking your signature on your ID, which the idea being you need to show proof of ID or a copy or something where they can compare it. Once a voter learns about the missing or mismatched signature, the voter may complete and return a vote by mail ballot cure affidavit with a copy of identification. So you can fix a incorrect ballot. How to track your vote by mail. Interesting. So any voter who has requested a vote by mail, this is in Florida, Ron DeSantis right there, the legend himself, can track online the status of his or her ballot through a link within the division's elections vote information lookup or through their county supervisor. The United States Postal Service also provides a free service. So there's two services: informed delivery, which I think confirms that your vote's been received. So yeah, you can track it. So Mr. I forgot his name, Dan Bongino, Bongino. You can track your vote. That's pretty awesome.
that this mail-in voting suggestion, mass mail-in voting nationwide, is going to be total chaos, and you may have an election and not have an election at the same time? What do I mean?
So is he saying it's chaos because there's going to be more votes and the system isn't going to be able to handle that? Which I know that in Pennsylvania right now, the request for mail-in ballots is something up like 50%. And interestingly, I think Ron DeSantis in Florida, who is a Trump backer, is very carefully backing the mail-in election process, because I don't know if any of you haven't been to Florida. It is for many people an old folks home. And there's a lot of old people that love Donald Trump, and they love the idea of voting by post and not getting the coronavirus. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, as I think there's going to be a lot of people who are, if mail-in voting wasn't permitted, which I don't think there's anything anybody can do about the existing systems. Like I said, there's 33 states that allow mail-in voting without excuse. So it's already in place for most of the country, and the world hasn't caught on fire. And I think a lot of countries do it as well, to a high degree.
You'll have an election. You'll get results. The results will be in doubt because people will start popping up on the news every night. I never got my vote. Thousands of them on both sides.
So that's never really happened, though. So what is the scenario that he's painting a picture of that's going to happen? So how is it going to happen where we've tracked all of these ballots? We know where they're going. We know where they're coming from. The U.S. Post is tracking them. What is the system in place? Actually, let me finish this, because I want to look at more of what the Brennan Center highlighted as far as how mail-in voting works, which, I'll be fair, it is, I think, general for most states. I think there is going to be some differentiation.
And what's going to happen, Joe? People on both sides are going to say, we need a new election. So you had an election, but you really didn't.
So it kind of goes back to what I think the president of the United States does. He's just kind of saying shit. There's really nothing. So again, I'm looking at this as somebody who's saying to a friend of mine, okay, I will watch this if you think it's compelling. And so far, the experiment that we've seen as far as how successful a mail by post is, it wasn't a very good experiment. So I think if I were to compare that experiment to metaphorically to something else, it's like making a judgment on how successful airlines are from getting you from A to B successfully, and then asking a student pilot in a Cessna to take you from one point to another in about the same amount of time. And so I think if we're using that experiment as a baseline, it's not brilliant. So I don't know. I'm really struggling to see sort of what I'm learning from this that challenges my point of view outside of this guy making up stories as to what could happen without any sort of foundation.
Folks, we got to get this down. We are the most advanced economy in the world, in the history of the planet. Can we please get this system down? Yeah,
I agree with him if he's talking about mail-in voting. I think it's not too difficult. We are the most advanced country in the world. We've got 33 states that have comprehensive mail-in voting structures in place. So the infrastructure is there for most states, and there's a model for the states that don't have it to that degree to implement it. And at the end of the day, it means more people are voting. And surely everybody should want more people voting. Right now, we have, I think, around the world, a record low number of votes versus the electorate that come out. We're down there as far as American citizens.
This really wouldn't be difficult if the Democrats wouldn't constantly be in the way of an effective constitutional republic, a representative democracy.
See, this is when people lose me. And I think there was somebody who commented yesterday who very much had this sort of overtone of it's us versus them, liberals versus conservatives. Democrats are trying to tear down the country. And again, that's more hyperbole. I've never heard so much hyperbole in my life. It's okay if we look at healthcare as an example. That's a popular one where people say, well, the Democrats want to tear apart, our capitalist society and turn us into socialism, which again is an exaggeration, and bring in healthcare. Isn't it possible just to have a different point of view on what's a better healthcare system? There are other countries, the one I'm living in currently, that has a fairly good healthcare system, and houses aren't burning down and people aren't dying from cancer at a different rate. Well, I don't know. I can't necessarily back that up. I'd have to look that up.
Voter ID, in-person voting, mail-in with exceptions, and absentee. This isn't hard. It's not hard to figure out. The Democrats aren't interested. They want chaos.
I wonder what Dan Bongino is saying, if he's such a Trumpite, when Trump was going on about the people being bussed into the ballots, bussed in to vote, the migrants that were being bussed in droves, in the thousands or the millions. So is he saying that those systems in place are not secure?
All right. That kind of threw the show a little bit. Came up right before we came on the air, but it's important. Don't focus so much on the hyperbole.
Okay. Don't focus so much on the hyperbole. Is he talking about his hyperbole?
The president does this all the time. Focus on the substance. He's not.
Don't focus on the hyperbole. Focus on the substance. If anybody is watching this and wants to comment, if you could tell me what substance that is, I'd love to hear it.
Wrong. The mail-in stuff is a disaster.
But what is he qualifying as a disaster? So this is not a new thing. So again, to my friend, if you're watching this, who shared this with me, what has he said, or what have they shown us that gives us pause for concern about the existing mail-in systems? Because all of his concerns are actually addressed by the current system, and the security arguably is a bit higher.
Spread that WRDW thing around. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, I will spread it around, because I think it does make the case for mail-in voting, if I'm honest. Because if you go back and look at the actual video, he goes to a post office. That post office they don't know what the experiment is, and they're not looking for these votes. I don't know to what level the people have been trained. And the letters that are coming in are just random letters with first-class stamps. They're not earmarked. They're not fingerprinted. They're not tracked. So that's the other thing. He mailed them in post boxes all over the city with no tracking. So they're just first class, and he's hoping they get there. He only waits 4 days. So he may have had 100% of those in 4 days' time. Well, sorry, let me say 2 weeks' time. And I'd be curious to hear if there is any downside to a vote being decided in late November for the presidency. I don't know what the issue would be. Again, I think that the country's strong enough to give the president-elect the amount of time to. Now, this is a what if, too. This is what if the election isn't decided by the outstanding number of votes. Many times with my absentee ballot, again, my vote is counted, but it's not counted until after the election's decided. That doesn't mean that my vote doesn't count. It just means that my vote wouldn't have made a difference in the outcome. I know the president was talking about an issue in New Jersey just the other day, and I think in that there was something like 200 ballots that were people that were arrested for dropping off 200 mail-in votes, which I guess that they had influenced somehow, and they're going to be arrested. And I thought that was a good advertisement for mail-in voting, because again, it's really hard to get away with it. Everything is just so obvious. Let's take a look at some of the other things. I'm going to wrap up here in a bit. Let's just take a look at some of the other things that that Brennan Center piece was referring to here. Let me find it, because I thought that was interesting. Where was it? I think I lost it. Brennan Center. Here it is. So where did we leave off? So we found that they so the fingerprint on every, so identification is barcodes, ballot tracking, which that's where we held off. Secure drop-off locations and drop boxes. So in that conversation that Dan was having, he was not Dan. So in that investigation was effectively dropping things off at random post boxes. So even let's say if a state doesn't have, what's up, Steve? In the clip, 3% of the mock ballots never arrived. Yeah, I know. So, Steve, here's my question, though, and this is what I'm talking about. In, I think, just about every state, it's recorded, and we can check this out. So if the ballot is tracked, and I think in some states, in a lot of states, if the ballot's never received, that ballot isn't counted. So, A, they never arrived, but they never arrived after only 4 days. So in the example of my absentee ballot, it probably isn't going to get there till 2 weeks after the election. And it is still counted, but it's not impacting the result in any way. So do you think there's a problem if the election is determined correctly and accurately 3 weeks after? So he said they never arrived, but do you know they never arrived? What if we came back to that experiment in 8 days' time? Would they have never arrived? So I think it's a fair question to ask, but he said it was 4 days. He said we went back 4 days later. So for me, it's not compelling enough for me to say that that's a problem. He didn't track them. Okay. He just sent out first class random post boxes. In this example here, if you look right here, secure drop-off locations and drop boxes. That's going to be different than that post office that we saw in Philadelphia. I'm sure they're hardworking, but they're not following any specific protocols for collecting mail-in ballots. And again, challenge me on it. I'm open to be challenged on it. So secure drop-off locations and drop boxes. Let me just show the clip here, just so you're getting. Sorry, Steve. Just want to make sure that everyone can see what your comment was. So Steve was saying in the clip, 3% of the mock ballots never arrived, which is what I was answering. I keep forgetting about that, Steve. Sorry, mate. So harsh penalties, which we saw that for the sake of 200 ballots, there were people that were called out in New York, and it looks like they're going to do some jail time. I think something like up to 20 years. Post-election audits. So a lot of the voter fraud, and I think the instances of voter fraud, we're looking at something like, let me see, history of voter fraud. Let's look that up. So history, no, statistics. Find that out, Steve. Not the best experience. Yeah, no, and I think that's fair. I think that's fair. And that's my issue with it. If we look at what Dan is talking about, and I think that's my issue, is it's not the best experiment. My friends, my conservative friends, are trying to make the case that mail-in voting is an issue because this experiment is eye-opening. It's stop, hold the phone. You need to see this. And that experiment is in no way related to what the exact situation is with mail-in voting. So I wish that experiment was a bit different. So going back to, where were we? As you can tell, I'm a tremendous multitasker. Polling sites as a fail-safe. And that was one thing I did read in quite a few states. So if, let's say, the polling site or your vote was on its way and it never arrived, there's nothing to stop you from then going to the polling site. So 33 states right now allow early voting via mail. So if you put in your vote, let's say in some cases a month in advance, or in Florida's case, 10 days in advance, and it doesn't arrive in a week, I believe you can then go in and you can make that vote. And if that vote never comes by post in Florida, then that means that your vote will count provisionally. And if, let's say, that vote never does come, then they'll take your provisional vote. But if your vote in mail comes, then that will take precedent. And I think in other states, it's the other way around. If you were to go and vote after you've made your mail-in ballot, you can change that. So there's just so many fail-safes and so many things that go into mail-in voting. And I think part of the reason I wanted to see this, and I'm not too arrogant to think that somebody's not going to sway my opinion, but things like this, it's just all hyperbole, and there's no real substance to it. And what I want substance. I want somebody to give me a compelling argument. Oh, we were going to look up before I go. I want to look up statistics of, I'm a terrible multitasker, of mail-in vote fraud, USA. And I say USA because there's a lot of countries that do it. Not fraud, but voting by post. So Brookings Institute. So what does the Brookings Institute have? Let's just bring it up here. All right. So I'm just showing you the resource. If you think my resources are bunk, let me know. Brookings Institute. Here's Donald Trump and his Twitter. I'm not going to make comment on that. I don't want that to weigh in. So the following table lists the 5 states that have been using vote by mail prior to 2018. We looked at their fraud cases from the heritage sample to see how many were of a type that were vote by mail systems might be more vulnerable to, and how many votes were affected. Our conclusion from Heritage's data, there is surprising little voter fraud and not nearly enough to justify blocking vote by mail systems. What is the Heritage? Heritage makes their, so what is Heritage? So this is what I think people need to do more, is check what the source is. And if I was doing something a bit more comprehensive, I'd look a little bit more than just scroll up. But the Heritage Foundation, a right-wing think tank, has been studying voter fraud for years in order to provide support for more restrictive voting laws such as voter ID. The most recent report has attention-grabbing headline, database swells to 1,285 proven cases of voter fraud in America. They admit the report isn't comprehensive because it doesn't capture cases that aren't investigated or prosecuted. Well, of course, which is what the president's complaining about the bussing in people. So that we could say those cancel each other out if we're speaking in generalities. Yet on the basis of the report, they argue that there's a serious voter fraud in America. Heritage makes their full database available, so we are able to look into the cases of voter fraud that they claim represent rampant illegal activity. We begin with the 5 states that have already used universal vote-by-mail systems and thus have 1 or more elections under their belt. Then we looked at the way Heritage categorizes cases, just checking the time because I got to do something for the wife and she will kill me if I don't do it. Most of their categories, such as false voter registration or ballot petition fraud, can occur regardless of whether a state has implemented vote by mail. However, we might expect that duplicate voting and fraudulent use of an absentee ballot, which I think a lot of states have a safeguard in for that, both of which typically involve one person voting their own ballot and someone else's ballot as well. Would be easier in vote by mail states than in states where voters would have to physically travel between precincts or from one county to another. But as we see that, I think Florida, what they've done in that situation, and Florida is the dumpster fire example because of the hanging chads back with, I think it was Al Gore and George W. And I think the idea being now with mail-in votes, you have to sign a designee to pick it up, and they have to show ID. You have to show ID. You have to show them your signature anyway because they have to sign off on the signature. So here we go. So vote by mail by state. So total cases of voter fraud in the Heritage sample, 14. Total cases of duplicate ballot voting or absentee ballot fraud in Heritage sample, so that's 8. Number of fraudulent votes attempted by mail. So we have 8. So this is a subsection, but we're talking about such a minuscule amount that it's going to have no impact whatsoever. And I think when we look at those cases, if you were to look at those cases, a lot of those are going to be local elections because the amount of votes that you can mobilize to impact are going to be quite small. So imagine you're trying to impact enough votes in a presidential election in, say, Manhattan, or even in Montana, where you have to go far and wide. It's going to be damn near impossible to have enough votes in to make any difference. So I'm rabbiting on a bit, but I thought that was an interesting exercise anyway. I just wanted to see what Dan had to say, and I'm going to maybe look into see if Dan had anything else to say, just to be fair to him, because that was something I think he just threw on last minute. It came up on my Facebook feed, and it didn't pass the smell test as far as I'm concerned. But if you think otherwise, please comment in the video below. If you're watching this, please like. We do a regular show. My colleague Hugh, who's the other half of Bearded Philosophy, we're going to have a show on Sunday, I believe. We just need to confirm Hugh's attendance. Hugh, if you're watching this, let me know if you can make it on Sunday. I will be free. And during the week, I'll probably do these little bits. I'm not going to do it as much as I have this week. It's school holidays. Things are a bit slower for me. Yeah, I just thought I'd have a bit of fun with that this week. So anybody have any questions? I've had a few viewers today. No? All right. Well, listen, have yourself a good day. Let me just put on the socials just so you know where to find us. So if you are watching this on Facebook, awesome. It's not on Facebook, not on Facebook. If you're watching this on YouTube, awesome. Most of our traffic has been on Twitter and Periscope. But if you do find that you're enjoying the conversation and you want to be a part of the conversation like Steve was, and Steve, I just want to thank you for participating, jumping in. I really do appreciate seeing comments coming in. We are in a position where we have 9 subscribers, so you pretty much can jump in and join the conversation and have your voice heard. So thank you to Steve. Thank you to the people who've been jumping on and off today. And please, if you do, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel on YouTube or follow us on Twitter at Bearded Philoso 1, which you're probably already there, most of you. Again, Facebook, Bearded Philosophy. Facebook doesn't do shit for us, so you can follow it. You can't. And coming soon to Instagram. I've got an Instagram account, but I haven't posted on it yet. And then, yeah, the YouTube channel will be the way to go. All right. Well, listen, hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.